As we move to our next story, we turn to a life-altering experience that began with debilitating pain and culminated in a powerful lesson about the importance of genuine human connection. Through his struggles with health and his work in pest control, Rob Greer illustrates how problem-solving rooted in empathy can not only lead to effective solutions, but also strengthen relationships, both personal and professional.
Hi, I'm Rob Greer, and this is my story of empathy and understanding in business. I work in pest control. I'm the COO and the certified entomologist for the company. So I do everything from try and solve problems with people to try and solve problems with weird bug and rodent situations. And so every day has new surprises for me. The inspiration for this chapter came as a slow building conglomerate of things. It really started with an experience I had where somebody showed me empathy. Then I read Chris Voss's book and it really resonated with me. And although I started looking for one thing, I found another and it just grabbed hold of me and I felt like it was something I had to pursue. And so I did a lot of study on angles from business to psychology to neuroscience, just trying to really understand this element that seemed so captivating to me. My overall philosophy on empathy really started to take shape when I had it turned out to be a life-threatening experience. I personally didn't know it at the time. It was just a really annoying health situation that kept coming up, and every time I'd go in, whether it was, down in the infirmary on a cruise ship or going into the hospital, I'd get things for, ulcers or just irritable bowel syndrome, just tons of different things, but nothing ever made a difference. When I drove myself to the hospital in the middle of the night, I just happened to encounter an individual that I had known from previous experience in some other programs where he had his youth in there and I was a leader in there. And when he heard the backstory, it really stood out to him that, when he looked at the file and just saw all of these, wave it to the side, it's really not anything big. He said, no, I know you. I know the kinds of things that you do. And I know this has to be something serious if you're like this. And so he committed right there. He said, you're not leaving and I'm not leaving until we find out what the actual cause is here. And it was him really, he could have just brushed me to the side like any other. I'm sure at 3, 4 in the morning, he was ready to be done. But his commitment to it really had a big impact on me. And when I came to find out that in a previous surgery I had, they accidentally stitched my intestines to the peritoneum. And so it was just building up this mass in there that at any point could rupture and it probably would have killed me before anybody figured out what it was. And his commitment right there to figure out what this annoying pain was ultimately ended up being a lifesaver because, it was beyond what would be considered, a safe realm right there. When we encounter a problem, our natural instinct is to just tackle the problem itself as it presents itself to us. When we start to make empathy part of our regular tool set that we use, that we apply to everything, we start to look deeper and we start to look upstream to try and find the root of that. In Empathy and Understanding, I share a story of a team member that was on the verge of being fired and the manager was at wit's end and came to me and said, hey, if there's anything you can do, otherwise I'm gonna have to let her go. And I was able to connect with her and find out that she believed that her core value she was pursuing was helping people, even though she was helping nobody, not even herself. By helping her to realize ways that she could be a helper and be lifting people up and have that align with the company and her team and our customers, she became a totally different person. It was just that fine little switch. And interestingly enough, I had a similar thing with her manager where when he first started, he'd come from a background of perfection. Everything was expected for leadership to execute and get it right every time. And if you got it wrong, you had to have the answer as to what was going on. And so he was always giving me excuses and backstories. And I just pulled him aside one day and I said, hey, what's going on here? What's the background you're coming from? And we dug in and I was able to find out where his values were and what he really wanted and what was building that divide. And as I connected with him, it was really simple to just say, hey, we're not like that here. We celebrate failure as an opportunity to grow closer as a team, to improve, to investigate and find out what's really underneath there. And so I think that's what really inspired him to come to me, was that shared experience we had and hoping that I could connect with her. So it's fun to see those experiences kind of snowball and slowly pick up momentum. And when one person experiences it, they have a desire to share that with someone else. And it just makes the organization improve with every experience that it builds on. It's been an interesting journey as an ultra athlete. I previously had called myself an ultra runner, and for over a decade, that's what I had done. And I learned lots of lessons along the way of when to quit and when to pivot. And as an update to that story, I recently got diagnosed with severe arthritis, and pretty much every joint in my body that I broke as a kid, which is far more than is honorable, I guess, but it presented me with a problem because I could no longer run. If I do, I'm just chopping away at the time that I'll be able to move, and I can't run like I used to. And so it was a really difficult few weeks of just accepting the fact that I had to quit as an ultra runner. I've done things from 100 miles in a day to races over 325 miles long. And it's my passion, it's my love, it's what drives me at work. And it was really hard to accept that this was something that I had to quit. And I had a really long run planned across Idaho, and it was going to start in one of my favorite climbing spots and end in one that has a lot of historical significance to me. And I had to just push those plans to the side and just let it be that. And it was tough. But then I realized I didn't have to. Like, being an ultra runner wasn't who I was. I was a person who does hard things, and I challenge myself. And I'd been dragging a tire and doing things to kind of mimic running in the hopes that something would change, and it took time. And I think I had to have just compassion for myself and patience and say, hey, you'll find something. Just keep yourself in a good spot, as positive as you can. And I found out by dumb luck that cycling didn't aggravate the arthritis. So then, it was 2 months until go time, and I thought, hey, how much can I train and put something similar together? And I ended up putting together a bike from Nevada to Canada and still go across Idaho like I had planned, but it was just a pivot. And, going into day 2 of over 100 miles of sitting on a bike seat and just wondering if all the skin had flaked off and I was just gonna start gushing blood on my bike seat, I thought moving into the end of day 2 that, no, there's no way, I cannot get back on this seat another day. And I started to have a little bit of self-compassion there and say, hey, it's not a big deal. You got 2 months to train for this, 700 miles and 5 miles of elevation gain. You probably just weren't ready. It's cool. Phoned it in. You can't do it now because there's no cell reception. But get to the end, just finish out the day, and we can come back next year. And then I got a flat tire. I was like, so then I pulled out the pump, the CO2 pump, and I had somehow messed it up and had unthreaded cartridges for a threaded pump, so I couldn't even fill up my tires. So I'm sitting there with a hand pump, got the tire half full, and I'm like, maybe I have to quit. I'm like, I'll just go. I've got daylight left. Ended up rolling into a trailer park in Riggins, Idaho, talking to people that had bikes outside, seeing if they had pumps, and they introduced me to, the one guy who has all the tools. And so went over there, he got me a pump, I got my tire filled up, and I was like, okay, I can tackle tomorrow. Too many things have aligned. So I didn't quit, and I woke up the next morning and my tire was flat again. I went back over, it was like 5 in the morning, and I'm knocking on this guy's trailer, waking him up, and he was totally cool about it, just the nicest guy in the world. And he helped me get things put back together again and get going. And somehow that was kind of that pivot moment from, no, I'm not gonna quit. People are here, they'll rally around me, people will help me. And sometimes we do have to quit, and sometimes we can pivot, and sometimes we don't know which it is, and we just have to have that patience and compassion for ourselves as we figure it out. Going back to the night where I received a bunch of empathy from Dr. Dan, I had a lack of empathy for my wife. I didn't want to wake her up, so I sent her an email to let her know where I was. And when she woke up but I wasn't there in the middle of the night, the last thing she was going to do is check her email. I failed to see that, so it was a really tense and sore spot. And it became an ongoing joke, and she would ask everybody we would come in contact with, hey, in this situation, would you send an email or what would you do? And so to just kind of turn some humor into it, I started sending her just a little, hey, good morning email every Saturday to commemorate that major error of mine. And they've turned into really good connection points where I just go through and I review the interactions that we've had during the week and use it as an opportunity to not only stay fresh on our relationship and keep things renewed and the focus where it needs to be for me, but also to hopefully remind her of everything that we've been through that week and over the years. I've really felt that when I wanted to apply empathy to business, the perfect training ground for me was at home. And there's so many opportunities between my wife and my kids. I mean, my son, he just had his best friend since he can remember walking move away, and he switched schools just to be in the same school as this kid, and it just kind of shook him to the core, and he didn't really know how to go on with life. He's right in that teenage emotional rush realm, and I wanted to in that moment just tell him, hey, it's gonna be fine. Like I had to go through this. My friend moved away when I was little, and instead I decided to just put that aside and try and feel things from his perspective. And I'm not one who feels really big emotions, but I sat him down and I put my hand on his shoulder to just comfort him. And in that moment, it was just like all of his emotions just flowed into me. And I could really recognize it because I don't feel like that. Like that's a foreign level of emotion. When that hit me, I couldn't even talk for about 5 minutes, and I just sat and cried with him. You know, I think that meant a lot for him as well as it did for me, just to be able to have that connection. And you know, that was 5-6 months ago, but as he's going through these teenage trials where it's a new thing every day, that's a major thing, he comes to me with a different level of connection and respect on those. And you know, whether it's his friend moving away or you know, mishaps with the gas can when we're trying to do a fire with s'mores and it's going up in flames, and we're trying to walk through how to not make those mistakes and not get super freaked out at each other, and you know, all these different things that are going to happen daily as a family. It's that practice of empathy and connection that helps me to understand and better help others. And I've noticed that my kids, when I make those mistakes, they're quick to apply that. And it's really fun to see those lessons that I've been trying to learn really embodied in them. And I can look to my 9-year-old, 13-year-old, 14-year-old as examples to me of how to do it. And it's really inspiring to see them be able to pick it up. And I know that, you know, by them focusing on these principles, they're going to be improving the world much more than the reach I'm going to be able to have as myself.
His journey reminds us that empathy is not just a tool for problem solving, but a vital connection that shapes our interactions and experiences. Rob's resilience in the face of pain and his commitment to understanding others highlight how we can turn challenges into meaningful growth.